reviews today about Confused Matthew. Confused Matthew is a reviewer with a YouTube channel that reviews bad movies and does it very well. He does reviews of things like Titanic, the Star Wars prequels, the Matrix sequels. They're very enjoyable, they're very entertaining, they're very well done. But one review that I think was not well done, was not well thought out, and really didn't convince me much, was his review of Back to the Future Part 2. Yes, he says that this is one of the worst sequels of all time. And you know, it's one of the most cherished sequels, so you'd really better have some good evidence for making a claim like this. Did he? Well, no, not in my opinion. His main complaint about the movie seems to be that he considered it to have had a negative impact on sequels since then. Now, the reason for this was that he said that the filmmaker's philosophy that what audiences want in a sequel is more of the same done differently was insulting. He threw Aliens at us as an example of why sequels should be different, and then he proceeded to give us a list of films where this philosophy has not worked. Now, I'm sorry, but why is his intelligence insulting? Why? I mean, one of the films like Terminator 2, Spider-Man 2, they're films I know he loves. He's put them on his MySpace page as some of his favorites. He's done videos where he said how much he likes them. And they're just clones of the first films in both series. I'm not saying they're bad films. Well, actually, I don't like Spider-Man too much, but regardless. But they're a lot like the original films. Think about it. Terminator 2 has pretty much the same basic plot as Terminator 1. I mean, you have the robot that comes back in time to kill someone, you have the person who protects that someone, and you have the person themselves. In Terminator, they pretty much just upgraded the soldier into the T-800 and the T-800 into the T-1000 and replaced Sarah with John. Okay, there were elements thought that were quite different, but really it was just a better version of the first film. It did what the first film did, and did it better. And by better, it did things differently. The first film didn't have the attempt to destroy Scott, it didn't have things like that. It had all the action, it had all the ideas of the robot can't kill, all the attempts to kill the robot, all the stuff like that. In Spider-Man 2, had the exact same villain storyline. The villain who has a personal relationship with Peter Parker, although I always felt that the first guy had a more personal relationship than the second guy, Dr. Octopus. I missed the first 5 minutes of the film, and I actually didn't realize they had anything to do with each other until I saw the whole thing. It's only in the first 5 minutes that really comes through. Regardless, this person goes insane after receiving large amounts of power from a bizarre source. They kidnap Mary Jane. Peter goes to rescue Mary Jane. Again, I thought the Green Goblin bridge things better, but anyway, I don't get why everyone likes that film. The second one, I mean. These films are even more like their predecessors than Back to the Future 2 is. And they're often considered to surpass their predecessors. So, what's wrong with this philosophy? Not that the biggest hole in his argument, which is when he says, about 5 seconds before putting forth this illogical statement, he declares that he likes Back to the Future 3 a lot. Why does he like it? Because it went back to what made Back to the Future a great film. That's right. He doesn't say it's a great sequel because it was different. He says it's a great sequel because it was the same, and Back to the Future 2 was different. He pretty much just nixes his own argument before he can put it forth. And really, I don't get his argument. It seems to be based on entirely circumstantial evidence. He seems to have taken film series that will support his argument and ignored the many that detract from his argument. His other complaint about the film was Biff. The the character of Biff was supposed to be a coward, and he said in this film, oh, he's not cowardly at all. He acts like a stereotypical villain. Perhaps he acts like a stereotypical villain, but I don't see how he's not cowardly. I mean, pretty much all his actions are cowardly. He seems to be trying to do whatever he can to stop people standing up to him. For example, he takes his revenge on George McFly. I know he's admitted to being wrong on one count on his MySpace blog, but I think there's a lot more he was wrong on. He says that the gun thing doesn't make sense. Yes, it does. That's him being cowardly. He's against an unarmed child who can do nothing against him, and yet still he feels the need to have a gun. It's in character. It's Biff being Biff. It's keeping in line with how he was in the first film. Okay, granted no one stands up to him, but we know what will happen if that does happen. Yeah, he pretty much takes out anyone who would be able to stop him, you know, the scientists, everyone. He also says that it's unnecessary to get the same information 3 times. Well, really, it didn't take very long. And also, I've seen a Biff beating up his younger self, like being real mean to his younger self, was really funny. Okay, maybe you didn't find it funny, but I did. Another complaint was the hoverboard scene. He said scenes don't become classic by repetition. The thing is though, this is a comedy, and I can't help wondering if the point of the hoverboard scene was a parody of how, as I've already mentioned, a lot of sequels just update what was in the other film. And of course, in a parody, you want to exaggerate things. You want to take them blow them out of proportion. And this scene does that. It blows the way films often just update things rather than coming up with something new, and blows them out of proportion, taking an entire scene fresh out of the first film and just changing what he's riding, just changing the skateboard into a hoverboard for comedic effect. It's funny. It's a funny scene. And he said the classic scenes don't become classic by repetition. Yeah, well, how come whole films become classic by repetition? Whole plot lines become classic by repetition. It just seemed like he was intentionally misunderstanding the film and taking whatever he could against the film. I just can't help but feel the whole review was kind of circumstantial. The rest of his complaints seem to be largely nitpicks, like his complaint about Marty's daughter, who we barely even see, so I don't think it really counts. He also said that nothing happens in the film, which I disagree with, and I think it's a biased point of view. In fact, I found a lot of what he said to be very biased. For example, he says that the setting when they go back to alternate 1985 doesn't work, but he never really explains why. I thought it worked pretty well, actually. I liked the first scene a lot, the first setting a lot, which he actually liked too. He said he wished they'd said it longer, like I said in the second setting. I wasn't a big fan of when they went back in time to the third setting. I love the scene with Biff versus Biff. The rest of it wasn't that great, though. I'll admit to that. The rest of it wasn't that great. But that's really the only problem I can see with the film. The rest of his complaints really didn't make a lot of... As I've explained, they were kind of biased. They didn't make a lot of sense. Oh yeah, one more thing. Maybe I'm just remembering this wrong, but when he complains about Marty getting all pissed off about being called a name, he said they're blowing stuff out of their asses. Somebody who's seen the first film recently, because I haven't seen it in ages, could tell me, didn't something that happened in the first film? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was just them blowing stuff out of their asses. I don't know. I saw the first film like 2 years ago, and I saw the second film like about a year ago. I really like both of them. I disagree that the final scene is the exact